Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. It started out like one of those nights that you replay in your head for weeks. You know when everything just flows perfectly. The jokes, the timing, even the weird coincidences. That was how it went with him. We matched on Tinder a few days earlier. His profile didn't even have that much on it. Just a couple of photos of him hiking and one with his dog. We talked for maybe 2 days before deciding to meet. It wasn't anything deep, just quick back and forths, but I liked how casual he was. Not pushy, not fake. We met at a small Italian place near the canal, one of those cozy spots where the lights are warm and the tables are too close together. He showed up early, already sitting at a table when I got there, and I remember thinking he looked even better in person. Tall, quiet confidence, clean hands, and that kind of steady eye contact that made me feel seen. Dinner was normal in the best way possible. We talked about random stuff, laughed, and even stayed for dessert. He insisted on walking me to my car even though it was just around the corner. The air was cool that night, the kind that feels fresh after it rains. I remember unlocking my car and just standing there for a second, thinking how easy everything had felt. When he asked to see me again, I said yeah without thinking twice. I got home, showered, scrolled through TikTok a bit, and went to bed smiling like an idiot. When I woke up, everything felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but the second I went to leave for work, I froze. My front door was slightly open. Not wide open, just a few inches. Enough that the light from the hallway cut through the dark of my apartment. My first thought was that I must have been half asleep last night and forgot to lock it. That made sense in the moment. I looked around. Everything was in place. My laptop was there, wallet untouched. Even the cash I kept in the kitchen drawer was still there. I brushed it off, locked the door, and went to work. The whole day, though, something in me wouldn't settle. It was like that faint ringing you get after a concert. It's quiet, but it lingers no matter what you do. That night, when I got home, I checked the door again. Locked. Perfectly fine. Still, I put a chair against the handle just in case. The next few days went by normal. He texted me. We joked about our bad coffee habits and planned another date for the weekend. But on Thursday night, something happened that made everything start to line up in a way I didn't want to believe. I came home late from work, juggling my tote bag, keys, and leftover pasta, and I noticed a folded receipt lying on my doormat. I don't keep receipts like that, and this one was from the same restaurant we'd gone to. My name wasn't on it, but his was. At first, I thought maybe had dropped it or something. I kicked it aside and went in. The place felt colder than usual, and it hit me that the thermostat was lower than I'd left it. That's when my stomach dropped. I knew I'd set it to 22 before leaving. I remembered because I hate coming home to a cold apartment. I went around checking the windows, doors, and even under my bed like some paranoid kid. Nothing. Everything looked untouched. I told myself I was being dramatic. Maybe I messed with the thermostat half asleep. The next morning, I couldn't find my spare key, the one I kept inside the little ceramic jar on the kitchen shelf. I emptied the whole thing out. Gum wrappers, coins, batteries, but no key. I started thinking maybe I had misplaced it weeks ago. I even checked my old bags, my coat pockets, the drawer under the sink. Nothing. By now, my chest wouldn't stop tightening every time I entered the apartment. I started double locking everything, leaving lights on, even setting up this cheap motion sensor light near the door. I didn't tell him about any of it because I didn't want to sound weird. When we met again that Saturday, he acted completely normal. Smiling, casual, same easy energy. But there was this one moment. I'll never forget it. When he reached into his jacket pocket to grab his phone, and for a split second, I heard the sound of keys jingling. Multiple keys. It shouldn't have meant anything. Everyone has keys. But that sound stuck in my head like it was something personal. Later that night, after I got home, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard a soft click from the living room, like metal tapping gently against metal. I sat up in bed, frozen, holding my breath so I could hear better. Then silence. Total silence. I didn't even move for 10 minutes. I wanted to grab my phone, but it was on the counter. After a while, I convinced myself it was from outside. Maybe a neighbor, maybe the pipes. Eventually, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was that the living room window was cracked open an inch. I'd never opened that window. It had a stiff latch that always stuck when I tried. That morning, I called my landlord pretending I'd lost my keys and asked to change the locks. I didn't tell them the real reason. I just wanted it done. He said he'd come by in the evening. When I got home from work, the lock was new. I finally felt like I could breathe again. Until around midnight. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, when I heard faint knocking. Not at the front door, from the inside. Like someone had tapped against the wall separating my apartment from the hallway. Slow, spaced out knocks. I stood there staring at the door. My phone was in my hand, but I didn't call anyone. I don't even know why. Maybe I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. The lights flickered a bit like they always did, but nothing else. I shut it fast, locked it, and sat on the floor for a while. That night, I slept with my shoes on. The next morning, I went down to the lobby to get my mail. There was an envelope with my name on it, but no stamp. Inside was my spare key, the one that had gone missing. I stared at it for so long that the guy at the mail desk asked if I was okay. I just nodded and walked back upstairs. I didn't go back inside. I just stood in the hallway staring at my own door, trying to picture him standing there, sliding that key into the lock, and walking around my apartment while I was gone. The worst part wasn't even that he'd been inside. It was that I couldn't figure out when or how. He never texted again after that weekend. His Tinder profile disappeared completely like it never existed. I moved out 2 weeks later, and even now, when I close my door at night, I find myself checking it 3 or 4 times just to be sure. Because the sound of a key turning in a lock doesn't leave your head that easily. It's crazy how someone can slide into your life so smoothly that you don't even notice the shift. That's how it was with her. I wasn't even planning on meeting anyone serious, just scrolling through Tinder on a boring Sunday night, matching for the sake of it. Then she popped up, not in a too perfect way, but in a real natural kind of way. Her pictures looked like she didn't even care to impress, and somehow that made her stand out. I liked that she looked relaxed, like she didn't need attention. We talked for about a week before we met. She was funny, easy to talk to, and somehow always said exactly what I was thinking. Our first date was at a Korean barbecue spot, and I swear it felt like I'd known her forever. She didn't act nervous, didn't overdo it. She was just calm. That kind of calm that makes you lower your own guard without realizing. After that, things moved fast. Too fast, maybe. But when something feels that easy, you don't really stop to question it. I'd see her every few days, then every night. She'd cook sometimes, bring food over to mine, and she always made sure I ate before her. I remember thinking that was cute, like some old school caring girlfriend thing. The first time I got sick was about 2 weeks in. I thought it was food poisoning. We'd had some takeout she picked up from this small Mediterranean place. That night I woke up with the worst stomach pain I've ever had. I was sweating, dizzy, and my body just wouldn't stop rejecting everything. She stayed with me the whole night, holding a towel to my forehead and telling me to rest. She looked genuinely worried. When I started feeling better the next morning, she smiled like it was a relief to her, too. She said she felt bad for picking that food, said she should have cooked instead. She made me soup that same evening. After that, I noticed I started craving her cooking. Even when I wasn't hungry, I wanted something she'd made. The way she seasoned her food hit different, like she knew what I liked better than I did. Every time she cooked, I'd finish the whole plate, no matter how full I was. And she'd always watch me eat with quiet satisfaction, like she was proud of something. Then it happened again. We were at her place this time, eating pasta she made from scratch. Halfway through, my stomach started twisting up. That same kind of pain as before. It wasn't like normal food sickness. This was deeper, like something crawling inside me, burning from the inside out. She took my plate and said maybe I'd eaten too fast. I ended up throwing up in her bathroom while she waited outside, rubbing my back through the door. I should have noticed then that she never got sick. Not once. We always ate the same food, and somehow I was the only one suffering. After that, my body felt weak all the time. I'd get dizzy randomly, lose focus at work, even forget things mid-sentence. When I told her, she got serious. Said maybe I wasn't taking care of myself enough. She started bringing over smoothies, vitamins, even herbal teas that smelled strong and bitter. She made me drink them while she sat across from me, resting her chin on her hand, watching every sip like she was making sure I finished. I started losing weight, even though I was eating more than ever. My friends noticed before I did. It said I looked pale, tired. I brushed it off. Said I'd been stressed. One day, I left work early because I felt like I was about to pass out. When I got home, she was already there. She had a key. I don't even remember giving it to her, but she said I had, so I believed her. She was in the kitchen, cutting something, and when she saw me, she smiled in that slow, almost dreamy way she always did. She said she'd made something special for me. A healing soup, she called it. I ate it even though my body was screaming not to. Every spoonful made me feel sicker, like the taste itself was off. There was this metallic hint underneath all the herbs. I thought maybe it was from the pot, maybe something burned. That night, I woke up shaking. My head spun so bad I could barely walk. I crawled to the sink and threw up again, and that's when I saw it. The soup, half digested, with these weird black flakes floating in it. I touched one, and it smeared on my fingers, leaving a dark, sticky mark. When I went back to bed, she wasn't there. Her bag was gone, her shoes too. The door was locked from the inside. The next morning, she came over like nothing happened. She acted all normal, smiling, hugging me, asking how I felt. I didn't know what to say, so I pretended to go along with it. She made breakfast. Pancakes this time. I didn't touch them. I told her I wasn't hungry. Her face changed for the first time since I'd met her. She looked disappointed, like I failed her somehow. That's when I started noticing all the little things I'd ignored before. How she'd always insist on serving me first. How she'd never eat more than a few bites herself. How she'd clean my plate right after without letting me help. And how she always had those tiny brown bottles in her purse, said they were essential oils, but I never saw her use them for anything except when she cooked. The next few days I pretended to be busy, avoided seeing her. My head started clearing up. My stomach calmed down. I thought maybe it was finally getting better. Then one night she showed up unannounced, holding a grocery bag full of food. I told her I was tired, that we could hang out another day, but she just looked at me and said she missed me. She said she couldn't sleep when we didn't talk. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I let her in. She cooked again. Stir-fry this time. The smell was strong. Too strong. While she was in the bathroom, I took the pan off the stove and poured the food into a plastic container. I replaced it with leftovers from the fridge so she wouldn't notice. When she came back, I pretended to eat. She smiled again, that slow smile. Later, after she left, I put the food she made into the fridge. The next morning, I took it to my friend who works at a lab. He studies chemical stuff. He tested it as a favor. When he called me the next day, his voice was serious. He said there were traces of a substance that shouldn't be in food. Low doses, but consistent. Something that affects the nervous system. I didn't know how to react. I didn't even confront her. I just blocked her number, changed my locks, and moved apartments within a week. It's been months now. I still think about how easily I let her in. How she'd smile every time I took a bite, like she was feeding something deeper than hunger. Sometimes I catch myself missing her, and then I remember the look she gave me that morning I refused to eat, that quiet disappointment, like she wasn't done yet. That's what scares me most. The idea that maybe in her mind, she still isn't. When his profile came up, I froze. It wasn't just that he looked like my ex. He was him. Same messy hair, same stupid smirk, same scar near his lip. I almost dropped my phone. I even checked the name twice, but it wasn't his. Different name, different age, but everything else. Identical. Down to the same gray hoodie he used to wear all the time. I stared at the screen for a while, trying to figure out if someone was messing with me. My ex didn't have social media anymore, and I blocked his number months ago. It couldn't be him. I convinced myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe a random guy who looked similar. But something in me couldn't swipe left. I matched with him, half out of curiosity, half out of something I didn't even want to admit. He messaged first. The way he typed felt familiar, though I told myself I was just seeing what I wanted to see. We talked a few days, and he suggested dinner. I didn't even think I'd say yes, but I did. The restaurant was one of those cozy Italian places with dim lights and old music playing too low to make out the lyrics. I got there early just to mentally prepare. When he walked in, I swear my chest tightened. He looked exactly like my ex. Not just similar, exactly. Even the way he walked, the way his hands moved when he adjusted his jacket. It was him. I tried not to freak out. I told myself maybe I was being dramatic. But when he sat down across from me, the way he smiled made my skin crawl. It was that same half smile my ex used to give me whenever he knew something I didn't. He started asking questions, normal ones at first. How my week was, what I'd been up to. Then he asked about my job. I told him I worked at the same office I'd been at for a while, and he said something like, "So you still work me at the station then?" I froze. I hadn't told him that. He laughed it off, said he just guessed. But the tone in his voice felt too confident. He kept doing it, slipping in tiny details that no stranger should know, like how I used to hate olives, or how I'd once lost my phone at a train station, or how I used to wear his hoodie when I stayed over because mine always smelled like paint from work. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to convince myself I'd mentioned those things online somewhere. But no, those were private things. Stuff I'd only ever told one person. When I looked up again, he was watching me, that same unreadable expression my ex always had when he wanted a reaction. He said something like he felt weirdly comfortable with me, like he'd known me before. He said, maybe we'd met in another life. I laughed awkwardly, but he didn't laugh with me. He just kept staring, like he was studying me. Then it got worse. He started bringing up things word for word, moments, phrases, inside jokes. Stuff I hadn't thought about in months. Things my ex and I had said during arguments, random conversations that had never been posted anywhere. My hands were shaking. I asked him how he knew those things, but he just tilted his head slightly and said something that made my stomach drop. He said, because I am him. Just different now. I didn't even know what to say. My first instinct was that he was joking, but the way he said it, calm, certain, made my throat tighten. He started talking like he was explaining something obvious. About how he'd changed, how he worked on himself, how he'd been given another chance to start over. Every part of me wanted to run, though my legs wouldn't move. The air around me felt heavy, like the walls were closing in. I asked his name again, trying to sound normal, and he said the new one. But then he whispered my old nickname, the one only my ex used to call me, the one that wasn't even close to my real name. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. My reflection in the mirror looked pale and sweaty, like I was sick. I pulled out my phone and looked up his Tinder profile again. The photos were gone. Just a blank screen with user not found. I came back to the table and he was still there smiling. He had his hands folded like he'd been waiting patiently. When the bill came, he paid without breaking eye contact. He asked if I wanted a ride home. I said no. He said he already knew where I lived. That was the last thing I remember clearly. Everything after that blurs together. Me standing outside the restaurant, pretending to call someone, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. I walked for blocks before I even dared to look behind me. When I finally got home, I locked the door, turned off the lights, and sat on the floor. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number. I didn't answer. It stopped after one ring. Later that night, I went through my old photos, just to reassure myself that my ex was still who I remembered him as. But when I looked closer, I noticed something I'd never seen before. In one of our old pictures, his reflection in the mirror behind us didn't quite match his smile. It was off by a split second, like the reflection moved slower than he did. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. I kept replaying that dinner over and over. His voice, his tone, the way he said he was different now. A week passed with no texts, no calls. I started to think maybe I'd imagined parts of it. Then one night I got home from work and found a note slipped under my door. Just one line. "Do you like me better this time?" It wasn't signed, but it was written in the same handwriting I'd seen before, the one from the notes my ex used to leave on my fridge when he stayed over. I moved apartments after that, deleted Tinder, changed my number. Sometimes, though, when I walk home at night, I see a shape standing near the station entrance, tall still, wearing a gray hoodie. And even when I tell myself it's just someone else, I can feel that same quiet stare following me until I turn the corner. Whatever he was, whoever he is now, I just know he wasn't lying when he said he was different.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
It started off just like any other random Tinder match. I didn't expect to go anywhere. Her name was Kara. She looked unreal. Tan skin, green eyes, long brown hair that looked like she lived by the beach. Every photo had that perfect lighting that made it feel like she didn't even try. She wasn't posing like everyone else did. She looked relaxed, normal, and that somehow made her stand out even more. She messaged me first, which already surprised me. Her opening line was funny, like she actually read my bio. We started talking, and she was easy to get along with, not one of those dry, one-word reply people. She had that type of energy that made me want to keep the conversation going. I told her about random stuff, my job, my dog, the small town I grew up in, even this dumb story about how I broke my arm when I was 8 climbing a fence behind my house. She listened. She remembered everything I said, and I liked that. After a week or so, she suggested we meet up. I said yeah without even thinking. We picked this diner off the motorway, not fancy but quiet, with those red leather boots and the smell of burnt coffee that never goes away. I got there first, ordered a drink, and kept checking the door. I even opened her Tinder photos again, just to remind myself what she looked like. She really did look too good to be true. Then the door opened, and I swear my brain froze. The woman who walked in looked nothing like the girl from the pictures. Not just a little different, completely. Her hair was dry and messy, her skin pale and patchy, her clothes oversized and rumpled. She looked tired, older, way older than I expected. For a second, I thought she might have been lost or looking for someone else, but then she looked right at me. She said my name, my full name. It was weird hearing it come out of her mouth. Not many people used it, not even at work. She smiled at me, but there was something off about it. It didn't match her eyes. She sat down across from me like everything was normal. I just sat there staring, trying to process what was happening. Then she started talking. At first, it was normal small talk, but then she said something that made my skin crawl. She asked if I still lived near the station. I hadn't told her that. I tried to play it cool, thinking maybe I mentioned it and forgot. But then she brought up something else. My dog, the one I had when I was a kid. She called him by his name. Then she said she remembered when he died and how I'd cry for days. I hadn't told her that either. She kept going, casually dropping details from my childhood. The name of the school I went to. The street I grew up on. She even said something about the time I got lost at the fair when I was 6. How my mom found me standing near the balloon stand, holding a melted ice cream. My stomach turned. That story wasn't online anywhere. I'd only ever told it to my family. Her hands were shaking as she talked, but her eyes never looked away from me. It was like she was waiting for me to remember something too. I couldn't think straight. My first thought was that she'd done some creepy deep dive online, like found old photos or school records. But the way she spoke, it didn't sound like she researched me. It sounded like she knew. I asked her how she knew all that, and she just smiled wider. It looked wrong. Too calm. She said she'd known me since I was little. She said she watched me grow up. I wanted to leave right then, but something about her tone made me freeze. It wasn't threatening. It was worse. It was soft, gentle, like someone talking to a child. She said she'd been waiting to see me again, that she was proud of me for the person I'd become. The waitress came over to take our order. I thought about saying something, anything, but my voice just didn't come up. The woman ordered coffee and never looked at the waitress once. She just kept looking at me. When the coffee came, her hands shook so bad she had to use both to hold the cup. The steam fogged her glasses a little, and for a split second, she looked completely exhausted, like she'd been awake for days. Then she looked up and said something I'll never forget. She said she was sorry for leaving me that day. I didn't understand what she meant. I didn't say anything. She reached into her bag and slid something across the table, a small silver necklace. I recognized it immediately. It was mine. Not something I'd bought recently. Something from when I was a kid. It used to hang on the handle of my dresser. My mom gave it to me when I was about 7, and I lost it years ago. I stared at it, trying to figure out how she even had it. She just smiled like she was giving it back to its rightful owner. At that point, I didn't even try to be polite. I stood up and said I had to go. She didn't stop me. She just nodded and said she'd find me again when the time was right. When I got to my car, I checked her Tinder profile. Gone. Not unmatched. Gone completely. I tried searching her name. Nothing. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. About how she knew everything. About the necklace. I called my mom the next morning just to ask if she remembered that old thing. She said yeah. That I dropped it one day when I got lost at the fair. She said a woman found it and gave it back to her. said she'd been the one who stayed with me at the lost and found tent until my mom arrived. I asked what the woman looked like. My mom said she was older, pale, with long brown hair. She couldn't remember her name, but she said the woman had told her she'd see me again someday. That was 20 years ago. I still have the necklace. I don't wear it. But sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I hear the sound of a spoon stirring coffee, slow, steady, like she's sitting across from me again, waiting. It was one of those nights that felt too good to end. Warm air, soft music, and that buzz from a couple drinks that made everything glow a little. His name was Callum. We meshed on Tinder about a week before, and he'd been smooth from the start. Confident, funny, but not in a way that felt forced. He had his easy charm, like he'd done this a million times before and knew exactly what to say. We met at a quiet bar near the river. It wasn't packed, just a few groups talking low over candles. He looked exactly like his pictures, maybe even better. His shirt was neatly ironed, hairstyled, and he smelled like something expensive. The kind of guy that made you forget you were supposed to be cautious. We talked for hours. It wasn't awkward once. He asked real questions, remembered what I said, and somehow managed to make me feel like the only person in the room. I kept thinking how rare that was, someone who didn't just talk about themselves. When it got late, I said I'd call an Uber, but he insisted he'd drive me. Said it was no trouble, said he lived near my area anyway. I hesitated for a second, but then thought it'd be rude to say no. Plus, he'd only had one drink, and he didn't seem the type to push boundaries. Outside, the air was cool, and his car was spotless, new, with black leather seats and that faint new car smell that makes you trust the person behind the wheel without realizing it. I buckled up, scrolled through my phone and checked the route, but my battery was on 1%. It died before I could even open maps. He laughed lightly, said he knew the way. At first, everything felt normal. The radio played softly, and the city lights blurred past. But then he took a turn I didn't recognize. I figured maybe it was just a faster route. I told him my street again, and he said he knew. Said this was a shortcut. We passed a roundabout, and he went left instead of straight. I didn't say anything, but my stomach tightened. The houses were getting fewer, the roads quieter. The street lights started thinning out. He kept talking, something about how he preferred quiet drives at night, how peaceful they were. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 12:47. I should have been home by then. I asked him again if he was sure this was the right way. He smiled, that same calm smile he had all night, and said yes. He kept his eyes on the road, hands loose on the wheel. The more he talked, the more I realized he wasn't really saying anything, just words filling the air. I reached for the door handle, just out of instinct, and that's when I noticed it. It didn't open. The button for the lock wasn't popping up. I tried the window switch too. Nothing. I laughed awkwardly, pretending it was fine, pretending I didn't feel my pulse in my throat. He said it was just how his car worked. Automatic locks. I nodded even though that made no sense. I looked down at my phone again, hoping maybe it'd flicker back on, but the screen stayed black. We passed a gas station, and I thought about saying I needed water, but something stopped me. His expression didn't change, but there was this tension under it, like the air in the car had thickened. His smile stayed the same, perfectly still, but his eyes looked different now. Another turn, another shortcut. The roads got narrower and darker. We drove past rows of empty warehouses, the kind of places that look abandoned even if they're not. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep them still. I didn't want him to notice. I started memorizing landmarks, a red graffiti wall, a crooked street sign, a flickering lamp. I told myself I'd remember them if I had to run. He asked if I was okay. I said yeah, my voice way higher than I meant it to be. He chuckled softly, like I just said something funny. When we reached an intersection, I saw a small convenience store up ahead, its lights still on. I said I needed to grab something real quick. He slowed down, then suddenly smiled wider and said we were almost there. But the store disappeared in the rearview mirror before I could say anything else. That's when I realized he wasn't slowing down anymore. The car sped up slightly, the road now nothing but trees on either side. I couldn't see any houses, just shadows and the blur of the headlights. I pressed my fingers against the door handle again, harder this time, but it stayed locked. My heart was racing so loud it drowned out the music. He kept humming along to the radio, quiet, almost cheerful, the kind of sound someone makes when everything's under control. I tried to think of ways to get him to stop. Pretending to be sick crossed my mind, but my throat felt dry. I couldn't even speak properly. Then I saw a car coming from the opposite direction, headlights flashing through the windshield. It was my chance. I waved my arm, making it look like I was fixing my hair, but hoping the driver would notice. For a second, the oncoming car slowed, its lights flickering in the mirror, but then it kept going. The silence after that felt heavier than before. He turned off the main road onto a dirt one. No signs, no lights, just the sound of gravel crunching under the tires. My breath hitched, and that's when he finally looked at me. Not a glance, a full look. His smile never faded, but his eyes had that empty, focused look, like he wasn't really seeing me. He said we were almost there again. I didn't know what there meant anymore. My brain was spinning, scanning for anything sharp, anything heavy. There was a water bottle at my feet. Plastic, useless. The car jolted over a bump, and I grabbed the dashboard to steady myself. My hand brushed something. The unlock button. I pressed it fast. Nothing happened. I pressed again. Still locked. He noticed. He laughed quietly, not even turning his head. Said I didn't trust him. Something in me snapped. I waited until he slowed down for another turn, then I reached over, yanked the gear shift into park, and slammed the door handle again with both hands. This time it clicked. Maybe a glitch, maybe luck. I didn't wait to think. I threw the door open and ran. The road tore at my shoes, my heart felt like it would explode, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I heard his car skid, the tires screeching, then nothing. No footsteps, no shouting, just quiet. When I finally reached the main road again, I saw headlights. I waved down a truck, and the driver pulled over immediately. I jumped in, shaking, crying, not even able to get words out. He dropped me at a petrol station where I called the police from the clerk's phone. They searched the area that night but didn't find anyone. No sign of the car. I looked up his Tinder later, gone. Not unmatched, just deleted completely, like he never existed. Now, every time someone offers to drive me home, I tell them no, even if it's raining, even if it's dark, even if it's miles away, because I can still see his face in the headlights that night. Calm, smiling, like he knew I wouldn't make it out. It started off normal. Just a regular match, regular girl, regular chat. Her name was Emily, and her profile looked simple enough. 3 pictures, all clean and natural, nothing over-edited. She looked like the kind of person who laughed easily, like she didn't care about filters or poses. That's what caught my attention. I'd been on enough dates to tell when someone tried too hard. She didn't. We talked for a few days before meeting. Her messages were always short but funny, and she was quick to reply. It didn't feel forced. When she asked if I wanted to grab dinner, I said sure. She picked the place, a cozy restaurant on the edge of town. Dim lights, wooden booths, soft music in the background. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a drink in front of her. She looked just like her photos, same brown hair, same kind eyes. But there was something about her expression that felt studied, like she was waiting for me to notice her. When I sat down, she smiled wide, stood up, and said she wanted a picture of us. I laughed it off, thinking she was joking, but she was serious. She held her phone up, snapped one before I even got to smile properly, and then another. I didn't think much of it. People take pictures on first dates all the time, right? The dinner went fine at first. We talked about music, work, places we wanted to travel. Every few minutes, though, she'd take out her phone again. Sometimes she'd take a photo of me mid-sentence, sometimes one of me laughing, sometimes of the food. She said she just liked capturing moments. It was a little weird, but I told myself she was just one of those people who lived for their photo albums. When we finished eating, she suggested a walk. The air was cool, and the streetlights flickered every few steps. She kept walking a little ahead of me, spinning around occasionally to take more pictures. My hands were in my pockets, my face probably red from the cold and the camera flashes. At one point, she told me to stand under one of the streetlights because the lighting was perfect. I did it half as a joke, striking a silly pose, but she didn't laugh. She just stared at her phone screen after taking the picture, her face blank. We walked back to her car, and she asked if I wanted to come by for coffee. I hesitated, but she smiled again, that same polite, perfect smile, and said she lived just 5 minutes away. I agreed. Her apartment was small but spotless. Everything in it looked arranged like it was meant to be photographed. She told me to sit on the couch while she made coffee, and before I knew it, she was taking more pictures. Me on the couch, me looking at my phone, me turning toward her. I started getting uncomfortable. I laughed and asked if she always took this many photos. She said she just wanted to remember the night. The coffee smelled strong, too strong. I took a sip anyway, and it tasted bitter. My stomach turned after a few minutes. She noticed and told me to lie down for a bit. I said I'd be fine, but she insisted, pointing to the couch. I didn't want to make it awkward, so I leaned back and closed my eyes. When I woke up, the room was dark. The only light came from her phone. She was standing over me, holding it close to my face, taking pictures. My head felt heavy, and I couldn't tell how long I'd been out. She noticed I was awake and quickly put the phone down, smiling softly. Said I'd fallen asleep and that she didn't want to wake me. I didn't stay long after that. I thanked her for the night, told her I was just tired from work, and left. She hugged me goodbye a little too long and said she'd text me in the morning. When I got home, I felt weird, like something was crawling under my skin. I checked my phone, expecting a message from her, but there was nothing. I tried to scroll through social media to distract myself, but then I saw something that made my stomach drop. It was a Facebook post. My face was in it. The page looked like one of those memorial pages people make when someone dies. My name was written in big letters at the top. There were photos of me, not old ones, but the ones she took that night. Me laughing at dinner, walking under the streetlight, sitting on her couch, even one where I looked half asleep. The caption underneath said, "Rest in peace," followed by tomorrow's date. For a second, I thought maybe it was a prank. Maybe she thought it would be funny. But as I scrolled, I saw more photos, ones I didn't even remember her taking. Me from different angles, me blinking, me turning away. They were all posted, as if I'd already died. There were even fake comments from friends saying they'd miss me, that I was gone too soon. Random accounts tagging me in posts like they knew me. The more I looked, the more detailed it got. A made-up obituary with my supposed age, job, even my hometown. I clicked the account that posted it. It was her. The same profile picture from Tinder. But when I went back to check the app, her profile was gone. No match, no messages, nothing. I reported the page, tried to get it taken down, but Facebook said it didn't violate any policy. I sat there all night, checking the locks on my door, trying to convince myself it was some sick joke. By morning, the page had more likes. The post had been shared. Random people commenting things like, "Fly high," and "He's in a better place." My heart was pounding so hard I felt sick. I turned my phone off for a while, tried to eat, couldn't. When I turned it back on, I had a new message from an unknown number. It was just a single photo. Me standing at my front door that morning, taken from across the street. The caption underneath said, "Almost time." I didn't go to work that day. I called the police, showed them the page, the messages, everything. They said they'd look into it. I stayed with a friend that night, just in case. The next day, the date from the post, I didn't leave the house. Every sound made me jump. Every car outside made me check the window. Around 7 p.m., I got another message. No text this time, just a photo. It was my living room, taken from inside the house. The lights were off. I moved 2 months later, deleted every dating app I had, and changed my number. I never found out who she really was. The memorial page eventually disappeared, but sometimes I still see people in random comments using my name, tagging the same old pictures. Every time I see a flash from someone's phone in public now, I freeze. Because I can't stop thinking about that last photo, the one in my living room, and how whoever took it never made a sound. I met him on a Thursday night when I was bored, sitting on my couch, eating leftover noodles and swiping without thinking. His name was Theo. His profile didn't look like the others. Clean photos. Nothing too flashy. No gym mirror or fake vacation shots. He looked calm. Confident in that quiet kind of way. His bio said something simple like coffee and chaos, and for some reason that line stuck with me. We talked a bit, nothing deep, just jokes and random questions. He said he worked in design, which made sense because everything about him looked put together. His clothes, the way he texted, even his punctuation. We talked until around midnight, and then he asked if I wanted to meet up over the weekend. Normally I'd say no that fast, but something about him felt grounded. Not fake, not over the top. Saturday came and he sent me an address. It wasn't a restaurant or a cafe, just an apartment. He said he'd cook instead, said he wanted to make something from scratch. It sounded risky, but he gave off that calm energy that made me trust him. So I went. The building was ridiculous, like glass lobby, marble floors, the kind of place that smells like money. I felt out of place the second I walked in. The doorman nodded like he'd seen me before, which was weird, but I didn't think much of it. Theo met me at the elevator wearing a gray shirt and black slacks, barefoot, casual, but not messy. He smiled like we'd known each other forever. When I stepped into the apartment, my jaw actually dropped. I'd seen nice apartments online, but this was different. Every single thing looked like it belonged in a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, framed art that looked real, not prints, and furniture that didn't squeak or wobble. There was this faint smell of cedar and something expensive I couldn't name. Even the lighting was perfect, soft and warm, bouncing off all the clean surfaces. He told me to make myself comfortable while he finished cooking. There was music playing quietly, some instrumental jazz, and everything looked perfectly arranged like a showroom. I remember running my hand along the marble counter because I'd never touched real marble before. We ate pasta and drank wine. He was smooth, funny, and totally relaxed. Nothing about him felt off. He talked about traveling, about architecture, about how he loved interior design. He never bragged, just talked like it was his normal life. I kept thinking how surreal it felt to be sitting there, in a place like that, with someone who seemed to have everything figured out. After dinner, we sat by the huge window overlooking the city. I remember thinking it didn't even feel real, like being inside a movie. The lights below looked fake, like someone had painted them on. I left around midnight. He walked me to the elevator, kissed me on the cheek, and said we'd see each other again. When I got home, I couldn't stop smiling. Everything about the night felt unreal, too perfect. The next day I texted him, but he didn't reply. I waited a few hours, then checked Tinder. His profile was gone, completely deleted. I thought maybe he just wasn't into me, so I brushed it off. But something about the whole thing wouldn't leave my head. The apartment, the way everything looked untouched. 3 days later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was short. Just said, "Hey, were you at this address Saturday night?" followed by the same building address. I didn't reply at first, but then they sent another text, this time a photo. It was me, leaving the lobby that night. The image was from the security cameras, time-stamped. The person said they were with building management and that I needed to call them immediately. I did. My stomach was in knots. When I called, a man answered, said he was the property manager. He asked who I was, how I knew the man who lived there. I said his name, Theo, and the line went silent for a few seconds. Then he told me no one named Theo lived there. The apartment was owned by someone overseas and was only used a few times a year. He said they'd gotten an alert that someone accessed the place using a copy key fob and a stolen ID that matched the real tenant's name. He said whoever was there that night wasn't supposed to be. My hands went cold. I told him everything. That I met the guy on Tinder, that he said it was his place, that he cooked dinner and acted totally normal. The manager said they'd already reported it to the police because the lock had been tampered with. Whoever broke in had swapped out the security tag, used fake credentials, and stayed there for 3 nights. They found out when the real tenant called from abroad, asking why he was getting new charges on his account for an ID rental verification service. That's when it hit me. He'd used a stolen ID to rent the place short-term through some high-end platform. He'd literally staged a whole fake life inside someone else's apartment. I hung up and sat there in silence for a long time. My brain kept going back to tiny details that suddenly made sense. How none of the closets were open, how the bathroom drawers were empty, how the fridge only had what we ate that night. It wasn't lived in. It was staged. I called the police after that and gave them his Tinder handle, the address, everything. They said they'd look into it. Days passed and nothing happened. I checked the building news online and saw an article about it. luxury apartment broken into using high-tech scam. It said they'd found traces of fake IDs, temporary SIM cards, and small hidden cameras near the entrance. My stomach dropped when I read that last part. Cameras. I couldn't stop wondering if he filmed me, if that perfect night was something he'd done before. A week later, I got a text from a new number. It was a picture of me again, sitting by that big window, wine glass in my hand, smiling. The angle was high, like it came from the corner of the ceiling. The message said, "You looked perfect that night." I blocked the number immediately, but I didn't sleep for days. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every knock made my heart race. When the police followed up, they told me he used multiple stolen IDs across different cities, always renting luxury apartments for a few days, always meeting people through dating apps. No one could find his real name. The last thing the officer said stuck with me. He said, "You got lucky. You left." Now, when I think back, I realize how wrong everything felt without me noticing. The way he never touched anything twice, how he kept his phone face down, how he said he loved cooking but didn't even have a spice rack. It's been months, but sometimes I still get random notifications. New login from unknown device. Every time I see one, I wonder if it's him again. If he's watching from somewhere, waiting for the next perfect apartment, the next person to impress, the next fake life to live for a night. And every time I pass that building, I can still see the window from the street, that same window I sat by, smiling at a man who never actually existed. It started out like one of those matches that feels too easy, the kind where everything clicks a little too fast. Her name was Mira. Blonde hair, sharp eyes, and this weird confidence that came through even in her texts. She wasn't trying to be cute or funny. She just said things in a way that made you want to keep replying. It felt different from the usual small talk that dies after a few lines. We matched on a Wednesday, talked on and off for 2 days, and by Friday night she said I should come over for a drink. Normally I'd suggest meeting in public first, but she sent me her address and it wasn't far. Plus, I don't know, there was something about the way she invited me that didn't sound sketchy. Just calm, casual, like she'd done this 100 times before, and nothing bad ever happened. Her place was an apartment near the edge of town. The building wasn't fancy, but new enough to look clean. I texted her when I arrived, and before I could even put my phone away, the door opened. She stood there barefoot, wearing a long dark sweater, her hair still slightly wet like she'd just showered. The air smelled like lavender and wine. She smiled, said to come in. The moment I stepped inside, I heard the door click shut behind me. Not slammed, just a soft mechanical sound, like something locking automatically. She saw me glance back and laughed a little, saying not to worry, that the door only opens when she says so. I thought she was joking, so I laughed too, even though it didn't sound like a joke. Her apartment was minimalist but strange. There were no photos, no decorations, nothing personal, just furniture. A couch, a low table, a few paintings that looked expensive but cold. Everything was white, beige, or gray. The air felt still, like the windows hadn't been opened in days. She poured drinks, red wine, already opened, and handed me a glass. I noticed her nails were painted black, chipped on 2 fingers. She sat across from me, staring for a bit too long before asking random questions. What I do for work, if I live alone, things like that. The way she listened made me uncomfortable. She wasn't reacting, just studying. After a while, she said she wanted to show me something. She stood up and walked to the hallway, expecting me to follow. I hesitated but went anyway. The hallway had 3 doors, all closed, all the same. She stopped at the middle one and opened it. Inside was a small room, completely empty except for a single chair facing the wall. The floor was spotless, and there was nothing else. No pictures, no shelves, nothing. She said she liked the room because it was quiet. I didn't know what that meant, but I nodded and tried to act normal. My brain was already thinking of ways to leave politely. We went back to the living room, and she refilled my glass, even though I hadn't finished the first one. I noticed her bottle was still almost full. She wasn't really drinking. She said she liked watching people when they drink, something about how it changes their face. I laughed it off again, pretending it was quirky, but my stomach was starting to twist. The air felt heavier. I looked at the door again and thought about asking how it worked, but she noticed me looking and smiled that same unsettling smile. At some point, my phone buzzed. I reached for it, but she said she preferred no phones out during first meetings. Her tone wasn't mean, but it wasn't a suggestion either. She stared until I put it face down on the table. After that, the silence stretched. She leaned back on the couch, her eyes half-lidded, just watching me. I could hear the hum of something faint, maybe a vent or some machine behind the walls. I couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it didn't sound right. When I said I should probably get going soon, she tilted her head slightly, like she didn't understand what I meant. She asked if I didn't feel comfortable there. I said it was late and I had to work early. She smiled again and said I didn't have to lie. That's when I realized the door behind me hadn't made any noise since I walked in. I stood up slowly, pretending I was just stretching. She didn't move. I told her it was a good night, thanked her for the drink, and started walking toward the door. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there watching me. I reached for the handle and pulled. Nothing. It didn't move at all. She said softly that it only opened when she said it did. The same thing she joked about earlier, only this time it didn't sound like a joke. I turned around, trying to keep my voice steady, and told her to open it. She didn't. She just smiled again, wide now like she was enjoying herself. I tried the handle again, harder this time. It didn't budge. She told me not to panic, said I could sit back down and she'd open it later. I told her no, I wasn't sitting back down. That's when her tone changed. She stood up slowly and started walking toward me. I backed up until my shoulder hit the door. My heart was pounding. She stopped a few steps away and said she didn't like when people ruined the mood. Her voice was calm, but her expression wasn't. Her eyes looked flat, emotionless. For a second, I thought she might actually be about to hurt me. I started looking around for something heavy, a bottle, a lamp, anything. She must have noticed because she laughed again and said I was overreacting. Then she turned around, walked over to a small panel near the kitchen, and pressed her finger against it. The door made that same soft click from earlier. She looked back at me and said I could go if I wanted. I didn't wait. I opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and practically ran to the elevator. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hit the button. When the doors closed, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't look back. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the room with the chair. The way she said it was quiet. I blocked her on everything. Deleted Tinder for a while. A few days later, I told a friend about it. He looked up her name and the address just to see if it was real. He couldn't find anything. No mirror at that building, no one who matched her pictures. The apartment number didn't even exist on the directory. It's been a few months now. Sometimes I still dream about that room, the empty one, the walls too clean, the sound of that soft lock clicking behind me. Every now and then, I check my front door before bed, just to make sure it opens from the inside. I matched with him late one night when I was half asleep, scrolling out of boredom. His profile looked normal, clean photos, decent bio, nothing weird. We talked for a bit, and he seemed funny at first. He asked about my job, where I was from, that kind of stuff. Nothing too personal. But then, gradually, his messages started getting strange. He started talking like we already knew each other, mentioning places near my house, asking if I still went to the same cafe I posted a photo from months ago. I hadn't told him where I lived, and my profile didn't list my area, so that already freaked me out. I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was a lucky guess. But the next day, he mentioned my friend's name, one that wasn't anywhere on my socials. He said she looked nice in the picture we took at a concert last year. That's when I blocked him. I didn't reply, didn't explain, just blocked him and deleted our chat. For a few days, I didn't think much of it. I told myself he was just weird and moved on. Then one of my friends texted me a screenshot. It was a Tinder profile, mine. Same photos, same bio, same everything, but it wasn't me. The name was spelled differently, just one letter off, and the age was wrong. My stomach dropped when I saw it. The creepiest part was that the location said the exact area where I lived, like not the city, the actual neighborhood. I reported it right away, told Tinder it was fake, and they said they'd look into it. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 days later, another friend texted me the same thing, another profile that looked exactly like mine. This time it had a new bio, one that sounded like something I'd never say. It said I was looking for someone who lives nearby and doesn't mind a little fun. I wanted to throw up. I opened the app and tried searching to see if I could find it, but nothing came up. It's like the fake profiles only appeared to certain people. One of my guy friends matched with one just to test it, and he said the account immediately sent him a message. The message said, "Hey, I've seen you around." He unmatched it right after. At this point, I was convinced it had to be Aaron. It made sense. He had my photos, my info, even the area I lived in. But I didn't know how he got all that. My socials were private, and I hadn't posted in weeks. Then it got worse. I started noticing little changes on my real Tinder account. My bio was being edited, not by me. Random words were added that I didn't write, like close by or friendly. My profile photos would switch order. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining things, but then I realized the edits matched what was on the fake profiles. I deleted the app completely, thinking that would stop it. That night, I got a DM on Instagram from a random account I didn't follow. It had no posts, no profile picture, just my name followed by a string of numbers. The message was short: "You can't block what's already you." I froze. I checked my own account settings, changed my password, turned everything private. I even deleted old posts, just in case. Then out of nowhere, one of my friends messaged me asking if I'd made a new Tinder account because I had just liked her profile. That's when it hit me. Whoever was behind this wasn't just copying me anymore. They were using my face to interact with people I actually knew. It wasn't random, it was targeted. I borrowed my friend's phone and swiped until I found the fake profile. It was the same pictures again, one from a birthday dinner, another from my old trip to Italy, and one I'd never posted anywhere. It was me sitting in my kitchen. That photo didn't exist online. I didn't even remember taking it. The bio said, "I like familiar faces." I reported it again, but Tinder didn't remove it this time. I tried emailing support directly, but they just sent me a generic response about ongoing investigations. For days, my friends kept sending me screenshots of new clones popping up. Some had my same face but different names. Others had bios written in a weird robotic way, like someone trying too hard to sound normal. One even had my voice recorded in a short video clip saying hi and laughing, something I posted once in my Instagram story a long time ago. Then one night, I got a message from my best friend. She said one of my accounts had messaged her on Tinder, saying we should meet up. The fake version of me had used her nickname, one I'd never said online. That was the last straw. I called the police the next day. They said it sounded like identity theft and told me to collect everything: screenshots, links, anything that could be used as proof. I spent hours compiling it all. When I went back on Tinder to take more screenshots, every fake profile had disappeared. All of them. Even my real one was gone, like it never existed. At first, I was relieved. I thought maybe Tinder had finally taken them down. But later that night, while scrolling on my phone, I got a new message request on Instagram. It was from another blank account. The username was my full name, but backward. The message said, "You look better this way." Attached was a photo, one I hadn't seen before. It was me standing in front of my apartment building, taken from across the street. I deleted all my social media after that. New accounts, new passwords, even a new phone number. I told my friends if they ever saw me on Tinder again, it wasn't me. It's been months now. I don't use in-dating apps, but sometimes my friends still send me screenshots. Not as often, but enough to know it's still happening. The fake profiles are quieter now, but they keep changing the names slightly. What's strange is that the photos keep getting newer. Ones I've taken recently, ones I never posted anywhere, ones from inside my apartment, pictures of me cooking, reading, sleeping on the couch, all from angles I couldn't have taken myself. Every time someone reports one, another shows up the next day with a caption that makes my stomach drop a little more. The last one said, "Still close by." It happened on a random Sunday night. I wasn't even planning to open Tinder, I just did it out of boredom. The kind of mindless scrolling you do when you're half watching Netflix and half wondering what to do with your life. I didn't expect to match with anyone, let alone her. Her name was Leah. Her profile was simple, a few pictures, nothing flashy. One of her sitting in a cave, another by a lake, and one where she was laughing so hard her eyes were nearly closed. It looked genuine, not one of those posed, over-edited profiles. Her bio said she liked photography, late-night drives, and mint tea. I don't know why, but something about her profile made me stop. I swiped right. Not even a second later, it said, "It's a match." Her first message came almost instantly. She said she liked my hoodie in one of my photos. It was an old black one and I barely wore anymore. I told her that and we started talking. The conversation felt weirdly natural, like we'd known each other before. She asked about my day, told me about hers, and the rhythm of it felt easy, familiar even. But then she started getting oddly specific. She asked why I was drinking coffee so late. I hadn't posted it anywhere, but I really was drinking coffee right then. I looked at my desk and stared at the mug, wondering if I'd mentioned it earlier, but I hadn't. I laughed it off and said I was just tired. She said she liked the cafe I got it from, the one across the street. I froze. I hadn't mentioned the cafe. I was home. I stared at her message for a long time before replying something random to change the subject. She didn't respond for a few minutes, then sent a photo of the sky. Pink clouds, horizon line glowing. The timestamp on the corner said 8:42 p.m. The same time it was for me. The view looked familiar, like it could have been taken just a few streets from where I lived. That night, I couldn't sleep. I told myself it was just someone messing around. Maybe she recognized the area from my pictures, or maybe it was some coincidence. But then the next day, she messaged again. She said she saw me at the bus stop. I hadn't posted anything, hadn't checked in anywhere. I just walked to the stop like usual, earbuds in, scrolling through my phone. No one had been nearby, just a few people heading to work. I typed out a reply but didn't send it. Then another message came through. She said the song I was listening to was nice, that it matched the weather. I checked around me. No one looking, no one holding a phone. My chest started tightening. I turned my music off and just sat there staring at the pavement until my bus came. When I got home, I went straight to her profile to block her, but it was gone. Completely. No trace. I searched her name. Tried scrolling through old chats, nothing. It was like it had never existed. For a few days, I didn't think about it much. Tinder's buggy, people unmatch all the time, whatever. But a week later, my friend sent me a link. It was a news article from 3 years ago. The headline had her name. The same face from Tinder. The same smile. The article said she'd gone missing one night after leaving a party near the lake. They found her car a week later, but never found her. The comments were full of people saying how kind she'd been, how she'd loved taking pictures of sunsets, how she just bought a camera before she disappeared. My hands went cold. I compared her Tinder photos to the ones in the article. They were identical, same angles, same locations. I deleted Tinder. But a few nights later, I got an email from Leah. No subject line, just my name in lowercase letters. Inside was a single photo attachment. When I opened it, I almost dropped my phone. It was a photo of me, sitting at the bus stop that morning. The angle was behind me, like someone standing a few meters away. My shoulders hunched forward, coffee cup in hand. My hoodie was pulled up just like that day. The timestamp on the corner read the exact time I'd been there. I didn't sleep that night. I unplugged my phone, turned off every light, and sat in silence until morning. The next day, I went to the cafe across the street, the one she mentioned. I'd never been inside before. It was small, quiet, smelled like cinnamon. I ordered coffee just to calm myself down. On the wall behind the counter were framed photos, landscapes, sunsets, and one of the lake from her profile picture. Under it, there was a small printed card that said, "In memory of Lee M." The barista noticed me looking and said her friend used to take photos for the shop. Said she passed away a few years ago. I nodded, pretending I didn't know the name. When I got home, I sat on my bed scrolling through my camera roll, and that's when I noticed something new. A picture at the very top, not one I'd taken. It was me again, asleep. Taken from the corner of my room. The timestamp was from the night before. I dropped my phone, checked my door, my windows, everything. All locked. My stomach felt like it was sinking. I went back to my phone to delete the photo, but before I could, the screen flickered. My Tinder app icon reappeared on my home screen. I swear I deleted it. I opened it without meaning to, maybe just out of panic. My account was still there, but my profile picture had changed. It wasn't me anymore, it was her. Same background, same lake, same smile. I tried deleting it again, but the app froze. Then a notification popped up on the top of my screen. New match. Leah. The chat opened automatically. There was one new message waiting. It said, "You live better from here." I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and went black. I didn't touch it again until morning. When I finally turned it back on, the Tinder app was gone again, like it had never been there. But the photo of me sleeping was still in my gallery. I deleted everything, apps, accounts, even reset my phone. I didn't tell anyone about it. What would it even say? That I matched with someone who'd been dead for 3 years and she knew where I was? No one would believe that. Now, every time I walk past that lake, I can't look at it. I just keep my eyes down. The reflection in the water always catches the light weirdly, like something's moving under it. A few weeks ago, I got a notification from a new dating app I had never downloaded. It said, Leah liked your profile. I didn't open it. I deleted my phone entirely, switched to an old one with no internet. But sometimes late at night, I'll hear the faint vibration of a notification sound that doesn't exist on this phone, and it always stops the moment I look at the screen. It's quiet for now, but I can't shake the feeling that somewhere that profile is still swiping, still matching, still watching. It started off like any other normal match. His name was Drew. His profile said he was a chef, and honestly, his pictures backed it up. He had that clean, confident look, white apron, tattoos that looked artistic, not messy, and a warm smile that made him look harmless. He had a photo of himself plating some fancy-looking dish with tweezers, another of him at a food festival, and one that looked like it was taken in a professional kitchen. I guess that's what pulled me in. We matched on a Wednesday. He messaged first, and the conversation flowed easily. He was charming without trying too hard, funny in a laid-back kind of way, and he actually seemed interested in talking. He asked what kind of food I liked, and when I said I loved Italian, he told me it was his specialty. He offered to cook for me sometime, said he'd make something from scratch, something I'd never forget. By Friday, we set a plan. He gave me his address and told me to come by around 7. I was nervous but kind of excited. The idea of someone cooking a meal just for me felt nice. His house was in a quiet neighborhood, not too far from where I lived. It wasn't one of those creepy isolated houses or anything, just a normal-looking place with trimmed bushes and lights on inside. I knocked once, and he opened the door almost instantly, like he'd been waiting right behind it. He looked exactly like his pictures, maybe a little older, but still attractive in that clean, put-together way. He smelled like something faintly spicy, cloves or cinnamon maybe. The house smelled like food too, but not strong enough to tell what kind. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside was how spotless everything was. The kitchen, especially, looked unreal. Every surface was gleaming. The counters had nothing on them except for a wooden cutting board and a single chef's knife. The stove was clean, too clean, like it had just been polished. For someone who claimed to be cooking all day, there wasn't a single dirty pan or crumb anywhere. He said dinner would be ready soon and told me to sit wherever I liked. There were candles already lit on the table, 2 wine glasses filled halfway, and a plate of bread neatly arranged like it came from a restaurant. I sat down and tried to make conversation, asking about his job, but he was vague, said he used to work at a few restaurants but preferred cooking for people who appreciate it. While he talked, I noticed something strange. The entire house was spotless except for one thing, the basement door. It was to the left of the kitchen, slightly open, just enough to see darkness below. Every time I glanced at it, I thought I saw a movement like a faint shadow crossing in front of the gap. At first, I ignored it. Old houses creak, air shifts, whatever. But then I heard something, a sound that didn't fit. It was faint, like a whisper. It came from the basement. I froze, holding my glass halfway to my lips, trying to listen without making it obvious. It wasn't the kind of whisper that comes from wind or pipes. It sounded too human, like 2 people talking quietly just out of earshot. I looked back at him, but he didn't seem to notice anything. He was smiling, asking if I wanted red or white sauce for my pasta. I nodded at whatever he said just to keep him distracted while I kept listening. The whispering stopped for a moment, then started again, this time louder, more hurried. My stomach started to twist. I tried to convince myself maybe he lived with someone, a roommate, a family member. But when I'd asked earlier, he said it was just him. He said he liked the quiet. He went to the counter to grab something, and that's when I saw it. The knife on the board wasn't there anymore. I scanned the counter, the stove, everywhere, gone. He came back with a plate of uncooked pasta in one hand, smiling like nothing was wrong. He started talking again, explaining how he makes his sauce, but I wasn't listening anymore. My eyes kept drifting toward that basement door. The whispering stopped again, replaced by a soft scraping noise like metal dragging against the floor. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to do it without making it obvious. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was echoing in the silence. I tried to think of something to say, some excuse to grab my bag and get out. Then, as he turned to stir something on the stove, the basement door creaked open another inch. This time I saw something move, a pale hand gripping the edge of the door, fingers curled tightly. It disappeared as soon as the floorboard creaked under my chair. I stood up fast, pretending to stretch, and said I had to use the bathroom. He smiled again and pointed down the hall, completely unfazed. The moment I stepped away from the kitchen, I walked straight past the bathroom and toward the front door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my phone out of my pocket. Before I could reach the door handle, I heard him call out from the kitchen. Cheerful, still pretending everything was normal. I didn't answer. I opened the door just enough to see the porch light outside, and that's when I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy ones coming out from the basement. I turned around just in time to see the basement door fully open. The air that came from it was cold, like damp earth. I didn't see anyone, but the whispering was louder now, layered, more than one voice all overlapping. I ran. I didn't even look back. I heard him shouting something behind me, but I didn't care what he said. I sprinted to my car, locked the doors, and drove without looking in the rearview mirror. When I got home, I deleted Tinder immediately. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I'd overreacted. Maybe it was just some weird misunderstanding. But then I checked my messages. His profile was gone, completely deleted like he never existed. A few days later, I told my friend what happened. She looked up his name out of curiosity, and her face went pale. She showed me an article, an old one from 2 years ago. It was about a restaurant worker named Drew who'd been fired for stealing supplies and acting inappropriately toward coworkers. It mentioned an investigation after 2 women who'd gone on dates with him went missing. The last line said police suspected he was living under different names. I still remember that spotless kitchen, the empty counters, the way that knife disappeared from the cutting board. And sometimes late at night, when my apartment is too quiet, I swear I can still hear faint whispering through the vents, like someone murmuring right below the floorboards, waiting for me to listen again. Her name was Leela. Her profile wasn't anything flashy. 3 photos, all casual. One of her sitting on a curb drinking iced coffee, one at the beach with messy hair, and one where she was half smiling like she wasn't sure if she wanted the photo taken. There wasn't much in her bio either, just a line that said, "I hate small talk." Our chats weren't like the usual surface level stuff either. She talked about random things like how she hated the sound of microwaves beeping or how she preferred walking in the rain without an umbrella. It felt real. She was funny, sharp, and a little strange in a way I liked. It didn't take long before we started talking every day. After a week, she told me she didn't really like meeting people in crowded places, so we agreed to go for a walk instead. She picked this park near the edge of the city, quiet, mostly empty, full of old trees that blocked the sun. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench scrolling through her phone. She looked exactly like her photos, but paler, like she hadn't been sleeping well. She smiled when she saw me, and we walked for a while, just talking. She told me about her love for photography, about how she used to take pictures of old buildings before they got torn down. I noticed she avoided talking about family, but I didn't push. When we said goodbye, she hugged me like she'd known me for years. After that, we saw each other almost every week. Always the same park, always at dusk. She never invited me to her place, and I never thought too hard about it. She said her roommate worked nights and she didn't let people over. It sounded fair. But the weird stuff started small. One night, she texted me saying she couldn't talk because her phone battery was dying. I didn't think much of it. But 10 minutes later, I saw her Active Now light pop up again. I asked if she got her phone charged, and she said she hadn't touched it. Another time, I mentioned a restaurant I'd gone to with friends, and she said she'd been there that same night. Same table, same waiter. But when I asked what she ordered, she didn't answer. She just said it was a nice place and changed the subject. Still, I ignored it. Maybe she was forgetful, maybe just weird with details. Then one evening, I was at the grocery store when I saw her, or thought I did. She was in the produce section, wearing a hoodie, holding a basket. I walked up to say hi, but before I could speak, she looked up and froze. It wasn't her. She looked almost identical, same face, same voice when she asked if I needed something, but there was something off. Her eyes were lighter, and she had this scar under her chin that Leela didn't. I apologized, said she just looked like someone I knew. She laughed awkwardly and said it wasn't the first time someone had told her that. We ended up talking for a few minutes, mostly because I couldn't stop staring. She said her name was Mara. The name hit me weird, close enough to Leela to sound like a bad joke. When I mentioned Tinder, she stopped smiling. She asked if I'd met someone named Leela on there. My heart started racing. I said yeah, that we'd been seeing each other for about a month. Her expression dropped completely. She told me Lila was her twin sister. Then she said something I didn't understand at first, that Leela had died last year. I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she didn't laugh with me. She said it quietly, like she'd said it too many times before. Leela had died in a car accident driving home from work. She even showed me a photo on her phone, a newspaper article with a picture of the same face I'd been seeing for weeks. I felt my throat close. I told her that wasn't possible. I'd met her, talked to her, seen her in person. I showed her my messages, my pictures. She looked through them silently. Then she said something that still makes me sick when I think about it, that I wasn't the first guy who'd said that. According to her, a few men had come forward over the past year, claiming they'd matched with Leela online. They all described her the same way. Quiet, calm, strange about where she lived, always meeting at dusk, never letting them take pictures together. I didn't want to believe her, but the way she said it, the sadness in her voice, made it impossible to argue. She asked where I'd been meeting her, and when I said the park, she just nodded like it made sense. She told me that was where her sister used to spend most of her time before she died. I left the store without buying anything. My head was spinning the entire way home. When I got there, I'd opened Tinder immediately. Her profile was still there. Same photos, same bio. I messaged her, asking what kind of joke this was. No reply. Then I noticed something. Her account had been active just 1 minute ago. The next day, I went back to the park. It was cloudy, colder than usual. I walked to the same bench where I'd first met her. There were flowers there, old wilted ones, the kind people leave at memorials. I felt my stomach twist. I turned to leave and saw someone standing at the far end of the path. A woman. Pale skin, dark hair, hands in her pockets. She looked exactly like her. I called out, but she didn't move. Just stood there watching. Then she turned and walked toward the trees, slow, like she wanted me to follow. I didn't. I got in my car and left as fast as I could. That night, I deleted Tinder. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 days later, I had a text from an unknown number. No name, no profile picture. Just a message that said, "You forgot your umbrella." The last time I saw her, I left it leaning against the park bench. I blocked the number, but the messages didn't stop. They came from different numbers, all saying small, personal things, things only she could have known. One of them said she missed me. Another said she was still waiting at the park. The final one came a week later. It was a photo of me, standing in the grocery store, looking at her twin. No one was near me when that picture was taken. I haven't gone back to that park since. My phone number is new, my accounts are gone. But every now and then, I still see her face pop up in suggested profiles online. Same name, same 3 photos. Always with that same half smile. And the worst part is, it always says, active just now. When I first met him, he felt like the most normal guy I'd ever dated. His name was Even. We matched on Tinder in early spring, and he stood out immediately, not because of his looks, but because he actually seemed like a real person. His profile wasn't full of mirror selfies or fake-looking quotes. It was simple. One photo with him cooking, one hiking, and another sitting with a dog that wasn't his but apparently a friend's. He told me he was a software developer, lived alone downtown, had a brother who traveled a lot and a mom who lived near the coast. Nothing crazy, nothing dramatic, just normal. After a few weeks of chatting, we went on a date. He picked this quiet cafe tucked between 2 bookstores, and I remember thinking it was refreshing that he didn't pick some trendy place just to show off. He was charming in a quiet way. Not overconfident, not awkward, just calm. He listened when I talked, actually remembered things I said, We clicked instantly. After that, we started seeing each other regularly, movie nights, dinners, random walks through the city. He made me feel comfortable, like he wasn't hiding anything. But now thinking back, I realized that was the trick. He had this way of making conversations about me, so I never asked too much about him. When he did talk about himself, everything sounded believable. He'd tell stories about work, how his boss was obsessive about deadlines, how one of his coworkers kept burning microwave popcorn. He talked about his apartment like it was some tiny but cozy space with bad plumbing and a leaky window. He even showed me pictures, quick snaps of what looked like a normal apartment. I never saw it in person, though. He always had some excuse. He'd say his landlord was doing repairs, or his brother was staying over, or that he was just embarrassed because it was a mess. I didn't push. I'd been in relationships where people didn't respect privacy, and I didn't want to be that person. Everything was fine for months. I introduced him to a few of my friends. They liked him too. One of them even said he seemed too perfect. I laughed it off, but deep down, I knew what she meant. The first red flag came one night when I was scrolling through Instagram. A girl I didn't know popped up on my Explore page. Mutual friends, baby. She had a photo of herself standing in front of a window, holding a cup of coffee. The background looked familiar, and it took me a second to realize why. It was the same exact window from the picture Evan had shown me. Same curtain pattern, same tiny crack near the frame. I clicked her profile and started scrolling. The apartment matched everything he described. The leaky window, the small kitchen, even the same ugly green tiles in the bathroom. Her captions mentioned all of it. She posted about the plumbing issue, the exact one he told me about. My heart sank. I didn't know what to think. Maybe they dated. Maybe he'd just been to her place before. But the more I looked, the weirder it got. She was still posting. Recent stuff. Pictures of her cat, her friends, her apartment. Evan didn't have a cat. The next day, I casually asked about his old cat from childhood that he'd once mentioned. He blinked like he didn't know what I was talking about, then laughed it off, saying I must have misunderstood. It felt off. That night, I went back to her Instagram and noticed her username linked to a blog in her bio. I clicked it. She wrote posts about her life, her job, her friends, her daily routines. Almost everything she wrote matched stories Evan had told me. The same food preferences, the same crazy boss, the same coworker with burnt popcorn. He wasn't just lying about small things. He was literally using her life, word for word. I didn't know what to do. I felt sick. The next time I saw him, I paid attention to every little thing. His phone wallpaper, his reactions, how he talked. He was still perfect. Too perfect. When I asked about his job again, he gave a few vague answers and quickly changed the subject. A few days later, I couldn't resist. I searched his name online, his full name, but there wasn't much. No social media, no LinkedIn, nothing. Just one old forum post under his name from years ago, asking for advice on identity rebuilding. It didn't make sense. I decided to dig deeper. I found another account under a slightly different name, same face in the profile picture. It belonged to a guy from another city. The bio listed a different job, a different story. I clicked through the photos, and my blood ran cold. In one of them, he was standing with a girl. Her name was tagged. I clicked her profile, and my heart dropped again. Her entire life matched more of the things he told me. The music he liked, the books he mentioned, the restaurant where he said he used to work. He was collecting people. Every girl he talked to, every person he met, he was taking bits of them, their jobs, their homes, their hobbies, and building himself out of their lives. I spent hours looking through profiles, realizing piece by piece how fake he was. His brother was a real person, some guy from Tinder I found by reverse searching his photo. His mom by the coast was a woman he'd matched with years ago, according to an old Reddit thread where she mentioned a guy pretending to be her son. Even the stories about hiking trips and cooking came from other people's photos. He wasn't just lying to me. He was building an identity out of strangers. When I confronted him, I didn't say I knew everything. I just said something felt off. He stayed calm, almost too calm. He said he understood, said he'd been distant because of work stress. The way he looked at me that night, I'll never forget it, like he was trying to memorize my face. I stopped seeing him after that. I blocked his number, deleted Tinder, tried to forget. But a few weeks later, one of my friends sent me a screenshot. A new Tinder profile. Same photos, different name. and his bio said he was a photographer now. The photos he'd used for proof were mine. The picture of me at the park, one from my Instagram, one of my old apartment. Even the caption under one of them, "Love early morning light," was something I'd said to him once. I reported it, but it didn't get taken down right away. For a few days, my fake self was out there, swiping, matching, talking to people. Now I keep my profiles private, everything locked. But sometimes when I search random names, I'll find pieces of him again, or maybe pieces of me. Phrases, stories, tiny bits of stolen lives stitched together into someone new. And every time I see one, I wonder if he's still out there, piecing himself together, one stolen detail at a time. It started on a Saturday night when I was bored enough to re-download Tinder again. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, just scrolling out of habit. That's when I matched with her. Her name was Elise. Her pictures were simple, one at a beach, one in a park, one with a dog that she said she was house sitting. She looked normal, friendly even. Her bio said she liked cooking and quiet nights in. Nothing about her profile stood out in a bad way. We talked for a couple of days. She had a calm energy, like someone who didn't need to try too hard. She said she was house sitting for a family friend who was away for the weekend and invited me over for dinner since she had the place to herself. I was hesitant at first, but she seemed trustworthy. She sent me the address, a really nice neighborhood on the edge of town. The kind of area with clean sidewalks, tall trees, and big houses that all looked the same. When I pulled up that evening, the house was even nicer than I expected. A two-story home with wide windows and a perfect garden. The lights were already on, and the door was slightly open, like she'd been expecting me. She greeted me at the door wearing a gray sweater and jeans, barefoot, holding a glass of wine. She smiled and said to come in. The inside looked like something out of a home magazine. Perfectly decorated, spotless, warm lighting. I remember asking if it was really her friend's house because it looked too put together for someone to just be house sitting. She laughed and said the owners were very particular. She cooked pasta, poured more wine, and we sat in the living room eating and talking. Everything about her felt natural. She wasn't weird or off. She told me she worked remotely as she traveled a lot. That house sitting helped her save money. It all sounded believable. After dinner, we sat on the couch. She played some quiet music and talked about how peaceful the neighborhood was. There was something about the way she said it, slow, like she was thinking of something else. The air started to feel a little heavy, like the silence between us was too long. I tried to make a joke about how the house looked like a movie set, but she didn't laugh. She was staring at the window. When I asked if everything was okay, she blinked, looked back at me, and smiled again like nothing happened. She said she thought she saw something outside. It wasn't a big deal. Big houses make weird noises, and a glass reflected the streetlights. But after that, she seemed distracted. Kept glancing toward the front door, her expression tightening every time a car drove by. A little while later, I heard a sound, a car door closing outside. Then two voices, muffled but close. She went completely still. I thought maybe it was her neighbors, but she turned to me and whispered that I had to be quiet. Her tone wasn't playful anymore. She looked terrified. She told me the homeowners weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow. I asked what the big deal was, but she didn't answer. She stood up, grabbed my hand, and led me toward the back of the house. I could hear keys jingling at the front door. She pulled me into a hallway and motioned for me to stay quiet. The front door opened. I heard footsteps, voices, a man and a woman. They were talking about dinner plans, laughing, completely unaware anyone was inside. My heart was racing. I thought maybe she'd just gotten the dates wrong, and they'd be mad about someone being there. But then she leaned close to me and whispered that I needed to leave. I asked how. The front was blocked. She pointed to the sliding door in the kitchen. The problem was to get to it. We have to cross the living room, the same one the homeowners were now walking into. She told me to wait while she checked if they'd gone upstairs. She peeked around the corner, then turned back to me and nodded for me to follow. I stepped out first, careful not to make a sound. The living room lights were dim. I could see their coats on the hooks by the door, keys on the counter. I kept moving toward the kitchen, expecting her right behind me. When I reached the sliding door, I looked back, but she was gone. The hallway was empty. I froze, whispering her name, but she didn't answer. I checked the corner where she'd stood. Nothing. The air felt weirdly cold all of a sudden. I started hearing the couple upstairs, still talking. I couldn't risk calling out louder. I opened the sliding door as quietly as I could and slipped out into the backyard. The night was still, the air heavy. I walked around the side of the house, crouching behind a hedge until I reached my car. I waited there for a minute, trying to calm down. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the keys in the ignition. Before I left, I glanced back at the house. Through the front window, I could see the couple moving around the living room. The woman was holding a wine glass, the same one Elise had been drinking from. I drove home and didn't sleep that night. My brain kept replaying everything, trying to make sense of it. The next morning, I decided to look up the address. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe she just panicked because she wasn't supposed to have guests. When I searched the house number online, it came up instantly, a real estate listing. It had been on the market for 6 months. Vacant. The photos matched exactly. Same furniture, same layout, same kitchen table we ate dinner at. There was no record of anyone named Elise linked to the property. I thought maybe she was squatting or pretending to house sit or something like that. I checked Tinder again, but her profile was gone. Not unmatched, completely deleted. Later that week, I went back to the neighborhood during the day. I told myself it was just to see if it was real. The same house was there, looking perfect under the sunlight. A car was parked in the driveway, different from the one I saw that night. I walked up to the mailbox, pretending to be lost, and looked at the name printed on it. It wasn't Elise. The front door opened suddenly. A man stepped out, older, maybe in his 50s. He asked if I needed help. I told him I thought a friend of mine had been house sitting there. He frowned and said no one had been staying there. They just moved in last month after the house sat empty for half a year. I asked if they'd found anything weird when they moved in. He hesitated, then said the only odd thing was the wine glass left on the counter when they first arrived. He said they assumed a realtor had forgotten it. I didn't say anything else. I just thanked him and left. That night, I went through my old messages with her again. The last one she'd sent me before I came over said she liked borrowing Liz for a little while. At the time, I thought it was some poetic joke. Now, every time I see a house with the lights on and curtains half drawn, I can't help but wonder if someone's inside who shouldn't be. Someone pretending to belong there, waiting for another stranger to show up for dinner. His name was Jordan. His profile said he was into hiking, cooking, and photography. Nothing over the top, just normal stuff. He had the kind of pictures that didn't look staged, but still managed to look good. One with his dog, one at a lake, and one of him standing in front of a small cabin that he said was his weekend place. We talked for a couple of weeks before meeting. He wasn't pushy, just smooth in a quiet kind of way. He said he loved cooking for people and invited me over for dinner one Friday night. Said he lived just outside town in that same cabin from his picture. I agreed because he seemed harmless, the type of guy you could actually imagine introducing to your friends. The drive there was longer than I expected. The road got narrower the further I went, lined with trees that blocked most of the light. His cabin was tucked away at the end of a gravel path, hidden behind overgrown bushes. It looked nice enough, small but cozy, lights glowing from the windows. He greeted me at the door, smiling, wearing an apron like he'd been actually cooking. Inside, it smelled amazing. Garlic, butter, something roasting. The place was spotless, with these warm yellow lights that made everything feel softer. He said he liked to keep things simple but intentional, which fit perfectly with the way the cabin looked. Dinner was great at first. He poured wine, told stories about traveling for photography gigs, showed me some of his pictures on his camera. I remember thinking how relaxed the night felt. He didn't seem nervous, just completely comfortable. Halfway through dinner, though, everything went dark. The lights flicked once, then the entire cabin went black. I jumped, but he didn't seem surprised. He just said it happened sometimes, said the area lost power often. I laughed it off, trying not to make it awkward. He disappeared into the kitchen, said he'd grab a flashlight. I used my phone for light, but the signal was gone. No bars. I checked twice, even stepped toward the window, but still nothing. The silence outside felt thick. Then a faint glow appeared down the hall, flickering like candlelight. He came back a minute later, holding a single candle and 2 matches. I joked about how prepared he was, and he just smiled again, saying he liked being ready. He led me into the living room where more candles were already lit. That's when it started to feel strange. There were at least 10 of them, all placed carefully, one on the mantel, one on each side table, one near the floor by the window. The flames flickered at the same rhythm, like they'd been burning for a while already. I asked when he lit them, and he said he hadn't yet. He claimed he must have forgotten some from a few nights ago. But the wax hadn't melted much, and they looked new, untouched, clean, no burned edges. I laughed, pretending not to think too hard about it, but my stomach tightened. He told me to sit while he checked the fuse box. I could hear his footsteps down the hallway, slow and steady, and then the sound of a door opening, probably the basement. I stayed where I was, staring at the candle flames. They didn't feel cozy anymore. They felt like they were watching. A few minutes passed. The only sounds were the faint hum of wind outside and something dripping, maybe from the kitchen sink. I decided to text a friend, but my phone still had no service. I put it down and started looking around the room. That's when I noticed something else. Every photo frame on the wall was empty. At first, I thought maybe he hadn't gotten around to putting pictures in them, but they were all different sizes. Old, new, mismatched. Some had dust outlines where pictures used to be. A few even had faint tape marks in the middle, like something had been pulled out quickly. I stood up and looked closer. In one of the frames behind the glass, there was a slip of paper instead of a photo. It had faint pencil marks on it. Numbers. A date. Last week's date. I didn't get a chance to think about it because I heard footsteps again. Only this time, they weren't coming from the hallway. They were softer. Closer. I turned and saw him standing behind me in the candlelight, smiling like nothing was wrong. He said the power might take a while to come back, that I should relax. He sat down on the couch, gestured for me to join him. I did, but every muscle in my body was tense. The air felt heavy. He started talking again, but I barely listened. I was watching his face, his hands, his movements. Something about him looked different in the candlelight, calmer, more focused, like this was all exactly how he wanted it. Then I noticed something even worse. There were more candles than before. I swear there were. A few extra ones burning on the floor behind the couch, and another near the hallway that hadn't been there earlier. The wax on those was melted further down than the others, like they'd been burning much longer. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he did. I made up an excuse about needing to call a friend to feed my dog and said I should get going before it got too dark to drive. He didn't argue. He just smiled again and then said he'd walk me out. The candles flickered as we passed them, and I noticed how neatly they were placed, like someone had marked each spot carefully before lighting them. The whole setup didn't look random. It looked intentional. When I got to my car, I tried to make small talk to keep things normal. He leaned on the door, his face half lit by the porch candlelight, and said something about how nice it was to have company during a blackout. Then he mentioned that he hadn't seen any blackout alerts earlier, which confused me because that meant he already knew the power would go out. The words didn't click until I was driving away. When I finally reached service, I checked online. No power outages were reported anywhere near that area. I texted him just to test it, asking if the lights had come back on yet. No reply. An hour later, curiosity got the better of me, and I looked up the address again. The cabin didn't exist on Google Maps. The location pin stopped half a mile before the gravel road. I tried calling the number he'd given me. It went straight to a disconnected tone. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those candles, the perfect way they lined up, the way the flames all burned evenly, like they'd been waiting for someone to be there. A week later, I drove back in daylight just to prove to myself it was real. The road was there. The trees were there. But where the cabin should have been, there was nothing. Just an empty clearing. No foundation, no mailbox, no sign anyone had lived there. But the dirt path still had tire tracks. Fresh ones. It started off normal, or at least I thought it did. Her name was Alina. She had one of those profiles that felt simple but real. 3 photos, a short bio, nothing flashy. She said she worked night shifts at a hospital and liked people who text back fast. She was funny too, in a dry, sarcastic kind of way. I matched with her on a Monday night, and we started messaging right away. Our first few texts were normal. She replied fast, sometimes before I'd even put my phone down. We talked about music, bad Tinder stories, How weird it was that the app kept recommending the same 5 people in our area. She said she'd just moved back to town after a few years away. It felt easy. Around midnight, I sent her something stupid, a meme about late night insomnia, and for some reason it didn't deliver. I thought maybe her phone died, but then I got another text a few seconds later from an unknown number. It said the same thing I had just sent her, only slightly changed. Same meme, same words, except the caption was darker. Instead of me at 3 a.m., it said, me when I can't sleep anymore. I thought maybe it was her messing with me. The timing was too weird. I asked if she had another number or if she was trying to prank me. No answer. Then she texted from her real number again, acting like nothing happened. I ignored the weird message and kept talking to her. The next day, we texted all morning. She sent photos of her coffee, the view from her window, random normal stuff. Around lunch, I sent her a text saying something like, "You probably hate my job. It's all numbers and screens." A minute later, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This one was from the same unknown number as before. It said almost the exact same thing, but twisted. "You probably hate what I do. It's all watching and waiting." That one made me stop cold. I showed it to a coworker, laughing it off like some random spam thing, but the timing was perfect. Every time I texted Alina, the other number sent something back within seconds, copying me but changing the tone, like a darker version of what I just said. By evening, it was happening every time. When I told Alina about it, she said she didn't know what I was talking about. She sounded normal, like she really didn't get it. I thought maybe someone hacked my number or something. I even reset my phone, but the messages didn't stop. Later that night, I tested it. I texted her something harmless, just, "What are you doing?" 5 seconds later, the unknown number replied, "What am I doing right now?" The wording made my stomach drop. It didn't sound random anymore. It sounded personal. The weirdest part was that sometimes the second number's messages came first, like it was predicting what I was about to say. The next day, I tried calling both numbers. Hers went through fine. The other one didn't. When I hit call, the line clicked once, then silence. No ring, no disconnect. Just quiet breathing. I hung up immediately. That night, she texted me saying she couldn't sleep. Said she felt like someone had been outside her window. I told her she was probably just tired, but halfway through typing that, the other number popped up again. It said, "I can't sleep either. Someone's outside." It was getting hard to tell if it was copying me or her at this point. Every time one of us texted, the other number followed seconds later, like it was reading both sides of the conversation. I started to panic. I told her to send me a photo of her window, maybe to prove she was okay, and she did. Just a blurry shot of her curtains. Nothing weird. But then, not even a minute later, the unknown number sent the same photo. Same angle, same everything, but zoomed out. You could see a figure in the corner of the frame. It was hard to tell if it was inside or outside. That's when I called her. She answered on the first ring, sounding shaken. She swore she didn't send that picture twice. I told her about the extra number, and she started crying. Said she'd been getting strange calls too, but every time she answered, it was just silence. We decided to meet up the next day just to get it over with and make sure neither of us was losing it. She said she'd text me when she finished work. But the message that came that afternoon wasn't from her. It was from the unknown number. It said, "She's not coming." I texted Alina's number right after, no response. Then, a few hours later, she finally texted back, saying her shift got extended. I asked if she just texted me before. She said no. I drove to the cafe we planned to meet at anyway, just to check. She didn't show. Half an hour later, while I was still sitting there, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. This time it sent one line, "She's already here." I looked around. The cafe was half empty. No one looked familiar. That night, she finally texted again, apologizing, saying she got home late. I told her I was getting freaked out, and she said she'd come by my place so we could talk about it in person. I hesitated, but agreed. I figured at least I'd get some kind of answer. An hour passed. No sign of her. Then I got another message. From her number. It said she was outside. I checked my phone. Another text came in at the same time from the unknown number. It said the same thing. I stared out my window. No one was there. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. Then the other number called me. My screen just said, "Unknown caller." Against my better judgment, I answered. No one spoke, but I could hear faint static. Then, underneath it, a voice that sounded like mine. Same tone, same rhythm, whispering words I couldn't fully make out. I only caught one sentence clearly before the line cut. Stop texting her. You're talking to me. I didn't sleep that night. I deleted both numbers, deleted the app, even changed my SIM card. A week later, I thought it was over. I didn't hear from either of them. Then one night, I got a text from a new match on Tinder. Different name, different photo. But when I opened the chat, the first message said, I missed you. My stomach dropped. I checked the number attached to the profile. It wasn't Alina's. It wasn't the unknown one either. But the area code was the same. I unmatched instantly, closed the app. But before I could delete it, another text came through, not from Tinder, from my regular messages. It was just a single line. Stop pretending you don't know which one of us you are. Now, every time I text someone new, I wait, because sometimes, even months later, the same thing happens again. The echo. A reply from nowhere, almost identical to mine, but just wrong enough to make me doubt which one I sent first. I met him in that random midweek swipe zone where you're half bored and half curious. His name was Mason. He had that outdoorsy vibe. All photos of cliffs, forests, trails. The kind of guy who looked like he spent every weekend doing something productive while everyone else slept in. His bio said something about breathing real air and disconnecting. I rolled my eyes but swiped anyway. He messaged almost immediately. He was polite, confident, but not pushy. He said he loved hiking and asked if I'd ever been to this trail just outside the city. I hadn't. I told him I wasn't exactly the hiking type, and he said he'd make it easy for me, a short route with a good view. I figured why not. He offered to drive since the trail was about an hour away, and I agreed. Stupid maybe, but at the time it didn't seem weird. We texted for a few days before the date, and he was totally normal. Funny, kind of dorky even. It didn't feel like one of those sketchy situations you hear about. Saturday came. He picked me up in his old SUV, the kind with camping gear tossed in the back. He had a thermos of coffee and a playlist that was actually decent. The drive was calm. Trees started replacing houses, and by the time we got there, there was no service. I didn't think much of it. We were in the middle of nowhere after all. The trail started off nice. Wide, open, sunlight cutting through the trees. Birds, wind, all that peaceful stuff people post on Instagram when they talk about reconnecting with nature. He walked ahead most of the time, talking about how he knew the area well. I tried to keep up, pretending I wasn't as out of shape as I was. About an hour in, I realized my phone battery was dying. I had 20% left. I told him, half joking, that I should have brought a charger. He said it didn't matter. We weren't far from the lookout point. But the trail didn't look like it was ending anytime soon. The trees got denser. The path got narrower. I kept asking how much longer, and he kept saying not far now. My phone finally died about 15 minutes later. He noticed. That's when things started to feel different. He stopped talking as much. The easygoing vibe from earlier was gone. His pace slowed down, though he didn't look back to check if I was keeping up anymore. The trail twisted downhill into darker forest, and I remember thinking it didn't look like the same one we came up on. After another hour, I asked if we'd missed the turn or something. He said he knew where we were going, but his tone changed. It wasn't reassuring anymore. It was flat. Eventually, the trees started blocking out most of the light. I was sweating, tired, and my feet hurt. He didn't look tired at all. He just kept walking, quiet, focused, like he was following something invisible. When the sun started setting, I got scared. I asked how far the car was. He stopped walking, finally turned around, and smiled in this weird, forced way. Then he said, "You should charge your phone. Now no one knows where we are." It didn't even register at first. I laughed awkwardly, thinking he was joking, but he didn't laugh. He just stared at me. I told him we should turn around. He said it was too dark to find the trail back. I asked if he had a flashlight. He said he didn't bring one. No bag, no gear, nothing. I started realizing how stupid it was. How I just followed a guy I barely knew into the woods without telling anyone where I was going. He said we could rest for a while. I didn't want to, but my legs felt like lead. We sat on this fallen tree trunk, the last bit of daylight disappearing through the branches. The silence was thick. I could hear him breathing next to me, slow and steady. After a few minutes, I said we should keep moving, but he didn't respond. When I turned to look at him, he was already standing again, facing the way. I thought he was trying to find the path, but then I noticed something strange. He wasn't moving, just standing there, completely still. I asked what he was looking at, and he finally said something, but his voice was quieter. He said we were being watched. I thought he was joking again, but his tone didn't sound like that. He said it like he meant it, like it wasn't us that got lost. It was something else that found us. The air felt colder suddenly. I didn't hear birds or wind anymore, just him breathing. He started walking again, faster this time. I followed, trying not to trip on roots and rocks. The sky was almost pitch black now. My eyes were struggling to adjust. I kept glancing behind me, half expecting something to step out of the trees. At one point, I realized we were going downhill again, even steeper than before. I asked where he was going, but he didn't answer. I grabbed his arm, told him to stop, and he finally did, but his eyes looked blank, like he wasn't really there. He said something under his breath I couldn't catch, then looked at me with this strange expression, like he was trying to decide something. Then he smiled again, the same fake, stretched smile from earlier. He said we should camp for the night. I told him I wanted to keep walking until we hit a road, but he shook his head and sat down. I didn't want to be alone, so I sat a few feet away, hugging my knees, trying to keep calm. The woods were dead silent except for small cracking sounds in the distance. I asked if he heard it. He didn't answer. His face was turned away from me, barely visible in the dark. Then I realized he was whispering. Not to me, just whispering something over and over. I tried to make out the words, but I couldn't. I asked what he was saying, and he stopped mid-sentence. The silence after that felt heavier than before. I said his name. No answer. I said it again louder. Still nothing. I stood up slowly and started backing away. That's when he finally moved, fast. He turned toward me, stood up, and said in this low, calm voice that he found the trail again. He pointed somewhere behind me. I didn't look. I just ran. I ran in the opposite direction until my lungs hurt. The forest felt endless, but I kept going. I tripped a few times, scraped my hands, but didn't stop. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away. After what felt like hours, I saw headlights through the trees. A road. I stumbled toward it, waving at the first car I saw. It stopped. The driver rolled down the window, and I barely got the words out before breaking down crying. He called the police, said I was lucky he saw me. When they went back to look for Mason, they didn't find anyone. No car, no trail, no sign we'd ever been there. They said there wasn't even a marked trail in that area. His Tinder profile was gone by the next morning. Sometimes when I think about it, I can still hear his voice, that flat tone when he said no one knew where we were. And every time I go hiking now, even with friends, I keep checking behind me. Because the woods feel too quiet, like something out there is still waiting for the next person who forgets to charge their phone. I woke up on a couch I didn't recognize in a room I didn't remember walking into. The blinds were half shut. The air smelled like something floral, and my phone was sitting on the table beside an empty glass of water. The weird thing was, I wasn't panicking yet. It felt like one of those mornings after a long night that just hadn't settled into clarity yet, like I was waiting for my brain to catch up. There were faint sounds from another room, the shuffle of feet. Maybe someone making coffee. That's when she walked in. Her name was Harper. I didn't recognize her face, but she looked familiar in that way people do when you've scrolled past their photo too many times. She smiled when she saw me, all calm and casual, like this wasn't strange at all. She handed me a mug and asked if I'd slept okay. The thing that threw me off wasn't the fact that she acted like she knew me. It was how confident she was about it. There wasn't even a hint of awkwardness. She started talking like we were continuing the conversation from last night. Said she made pancakes, that I always liked them with too much syrup. The way she said it, always, it made my stomach twist. I tried to act normal, pretending I was just groggy, but my brain was on overdrive, trying to connect the dots. I remembered matching with her on Tinder, sure. She had a few simple photos, one by a lake, one with a dog, and a close-up where she was half smiling, looking straight at the camera. Her bio was short, something like, "I like quiet people." We'd only messaged once, just one text exchange the night before. I grabbed my phone, pretending to check the time, but really I wanted to see for myself. I opened Tinder. Her chat was still there. The last message I had sent said, "Hey, you free tomorrow?" And that was it. No reply. Nothing else. But according to her, we'd already met multiple times. She kept talking while I scrolled. Said I'd been over a few nights ago. Said we watched a movie, the one she'd made me choose. She laughed about how I fell asleep halfway through. She remembered details, my shirt, my drink, how I'd taken my shoes off at the door without her even asking. I had no memory of any of it. I checked my texts, my calls, my location history. Nothing. No missed calls, no messages from her, no maps data showing I'd been anywhere near her place. Still, she talked like it was all real. I started scanning the room more closely. It was clean but weirdly impersonal, like a place that was lived in but staged for someone else to see. There were no family photos, no clutter, just small specific things. A candle that smelled like vanilla, a small plant, a mug that said "Good morning, love" on the counter. She told me we'd met 3 weeks ago, that I'd been distant at first but warmed up eventually. She said she liked that I didn't play games like the other guys. She even said she'd introduce me to her dog, but there was no dog in the house. Every time I asked a question, she'd tilt her head like she was confused that I didn't remember. After breakfast, she suggested we go for a walk. I tried to stall, saying I needed to check my phone charger, but she already had one plugged in for me. It was my Model 2, same color, same frayed cord. That's when the fear started creeping in. The more I looked around, the more I noticed details that made me uneasy. There was a sweatshirt draped over a chair that looked exactly like mine. Same logo, same faded color. When I touched it, it was warm. I checked the bathroom, pretending I needed to wash my face, and froze. My toothbrush was on the counter. Not just the same kind, the exact one. Same brand, same crack near the handle. I checked my bag just to be sure. Mine was gone. I walked out, forcing a smile that I think she could tell I was different now. Her expression softened, like she felt bad for me. She said I'd been like this before. Forgetful. She said it came and went. Forgetful of what? I decided I needed to leave. I told her I had to get home, that I had work later. She didn't argue, just smiled again and said she'd see me soon. I walked to the door, expecting her to say something else, but she just stood there watching. When I got outside, I realized I didn't recognize the neighborhood. Rows of identical houses, all painted the same shade of gray. No signs, no landmarks. I tried calling a ride, but I had no signal. My phone showed full battery, but no service. I walked down the street until I reached a main road. Finally, my phone buzzed to life. I checked my Maps app. No location data for the last 12 hours. Just blank space. When I got home, everything felt slightly off. My apartment door was unlocked, but nothing was missing. My charger was still gone, my toothbrush too. The next morning, I got a new message from her. Just one line. "Did you get home safe?" I didn't reply. I deleted the chat, deleted the app. But when I checked my texts later, there was another message from an unknown number. It said, "You left your hoodie again." I blocked the number, but the texts kept coming from new ones. Each one sounded casual, like she was trying to carry on a conversation I wasn't part of. "Dinner and tonight? You've been quiet lately. You always say that." A week later, I woke up to a notification. A new match. I wasn't even using the app anymore. It was her. Same name, same photo, but her bio was different this time. It said, "We've done this before." Out of curiosity, I opened the messages. There was a chat already there, like it had been ongoing for weeks. Dozens of texts between us that I didn't remember sending. And every single one was written in my style, same typos, same tone. The last message was from me. It said, "See you soon." Now sometimes when I wake up, my phone shows activity from hours I don't remember. Calls I didn't make, messages I don't recall typing. The other night, my neighbor told me he saw someone outside of my apartment window, said it looked like a woman standing still, just watching. I didn't see her, but when I checked my phone later, there was a new text waiting. From her. It said, "You looked peaceful this time." He wasn't trying too hard. No weird pickup lines, no fake charm. He just talked like a normal person. That's what made me like him in the first place. We talked for a week before meeting up. His photos looked casual, him with a dog, one in a record store, another at some outdoor market. He said he was a graphic designer who worked from home, that he liked quiet places, and that he preferred small talk over big crowds. It all sounded kind of perfect, honestly. The first date was easy. A small cafe in the city, coffee, laughter, that comfortable silence that doesn't feel awkward. He looked exactly like his pictures, maybe a little better in person. He was calm, funny, and had this weirdly soothing way of talking. I left that date thinking I actually got lucky for once. A few more dates followed. We meet for lunch, or walk through the park, or sit in his car listening to music for hours. It felt simple, like we'd known each other longer than we actually had. He wasn't clingy, just consistent. Always checking in, always kind. One night, he invited me over to his apartment. It was in his older building just outside the city, kind of tucked away. He said he liked the quiet. The place was neat. Too neat, maybe, but I figured that was just him being organized. He cooked dinner, and I brought dessert. We drank some wine, watched a movie, and everything was going perfectly normal. At some point, I got up to grab my bag and accidentally knocked his wallet off the coffee table. It hit the floor, and a few things spilled out. Cards, receipts, some cash. I bent down to pick them up before he could. That's when I saw it. A photo. It was small, like one of those that come from a disposable camera, and it was me. Not just a random photo that looked like me, it was me. I was sitting on a bench, holding a smoothie, wearing a denim jacket I hadn't worn in months. The background looked like the park near my apartment. My hair was shorter, so I knew it wasn't recent. The photo wasn't new. The edges were slightly bent, like it had been there a while. For a second, I froze. My brain was trying to make sense of it. Maybe he found it online. Maybe it was a weird coincidence. But the picture wasn't something I'd ever posted anywhere. It was too candid, taken from a distance, like someone watching. He noticed the silence. I looked up and he was standing behind the couch watching me. Not angry, not nervous, just quiet. His expression didn't change. He didn't rush over to grab it, didn't explain. He just looked at me like he was waiting to see what I'd do. I put the photo down on the table and said I should probably go. He didn't try to stop me. He just nodded like he'd expected that too. The whole drive home, my brain was running in circles. How long had he had that picture? How did he get it? I kept thinking maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe someone gave it to him. But even that didn't make sense. When I got home, I went through our messages. Our first text was just a week old. One single week. There was no way he could have had a photo of me before that, unless he already knew who I was. I tried calling him the next day, just to hear how he'd explain it, but he didn't answer. I texted instead. No reply. Hours later, I checked his profile. It was gone. Completely deleted. For the next few days, I tried convincing myself it was nothing. Maybe it really was a coincidence. Maybe someone had taken it and he just found it somewhere. I didn't want to believe I'd just spent weeks with someone who'd been watching me. Then things started getting weird. A few days later, I found another photo, this time slipped under my apartment door. The same size, same faded edges. It was me again. At the bus stop near my building, my back turned. There was no note, no handwriting, just the picture. I told my friend about it, showed her both photos. She said to go to the police. What I'd even say. My Tinder date might have an old photo of me. It sounded insane. That night, I tried to sleep but kept thinking about every time we met up. How he always seemed to know where to park. How he once mentioned a place near my work even though I never told him where that was. I went through his Instagram again, the one he'd given me when we first matched. It was gone too, completely wiped. His name didn't show up anywhere online anymore. The next morning, I woke up to a message. It wasn't from him directly, but from an unknown number. The text just said, "You always look different in person." I deleted it immediately. I couldn't bring myself to go outside that day. Every time I looked out my window, I half expected to see someone standing there. I started checking the locks twice before bed, closing the curtains all the way. But it didn't stop. Every few days, another photo would show up. Always me. Sometimes walking home, sometimes sitting in a cafe, sometimes standing by my window. None of them looked new, like he'd been taking them long before we met. It got to the point where I couldn't even tell which ones were from before and which were now. One night, I got home late and saw something on my doorstep. Another photo, face down this time. I picked it up without thinking. It was me again, this time from that same night. I was walking toward my apartment, holding my phone, wearing the same jacket I had on right then. The timestamp printed in the corner was from 10 minutes earlier. I moved out the next morning, didn't tell anyone where I was going, changed my number, deleted every app. I still don't know how long he'd known who I was before that first match, or how many photos he had. Sometimes late at night, I still feel like I'm being watched. Not in the paranoid way, just this strange sense that someone already knows where I'll be before I do. And sometimes when I walk past random people on the street, I catch someone looking at me too long. Every time it happens, I wonder if he's still out there somewhere, waiting for me to drop something else so I'll find whatever he's left behind this time. It started normal, which is probably what made it worse. Her name was Mia. We matched on Tinder on a Thursday night when I was half bored, half tired, scrolling without really looking. She messaged first, said something about how my bio sounded too real to be fake, whatever that meant. She had this effortless confidence, short dark hair, sharp smile, eyes that looked straight through the screen. Her pictures weren't over-edited, just casual. One of her standing in front of a mirror, another on some rooftop at night. We talked for hours. Not even about anything deep, just random stuff. She was funny, sarcastic in a way that made her feel more alive than most people online. By the time it hit midnight, she asked when I was free. I said Saturday. She said tomorrow. We met that Friday night. She picked this small bar I'd never heard of. Dim lights, quiet, tucked between two apartment buildings. The moment she walked in, I felt weirdly comfortable around her. She smelled faintly like cigarettes and something sweet, and she had that kind of presence where it felt like she already knew you before she even said hi. The night was easy. Drinks turned into laughs turned into walking around the block, and somehow that turned into me following her back to her apartment. I remember thinking it was too soon, but she didn't make it feel that way. She said she didn't like waiting when things felt right. Her apartment was small but cozy. The lights were low. Everything smelled faintly like incense and coffee. There were candles on the counter, a few framed photos on the wall, and records stacked next to an old player. She didn't have that fake stereo aesthetic most people tried to pull off. It felt lived in. We stayed up all night, talking, laughing, falling asleep with music still playing quietly in the background. When I woke up the next morning, she was already making coffee. I didn't think much of it. That became our thing. I started going over every few nights. She never came to my place, said she preferred being home, said she didn't like sleeping anywhere else. I didn't question it. Everything about her felt like a secret I was slowly being allowed to know one night at a time. By the third week, her apartment felt familiar. I could walk in and know where everything was. But something about it always felt slightly off. I couldn't explain it. Just small things. The way her curtains were always drawn, even in daylight. The way she'd always change the subject if I asked about the people in her framed photos. And the way she kept this one door in the hallway locked, the only one I never saw her open. One night, after we'd both fallen asleep, I woke up to a faint sound. A mechanical click, like a camera shutter. It came from the corner of the room. My eyes adjusted in the dark, but I didn't see anything. I told myself it was probably something outside, the old building settling, whatever. I fell back asleep. The next morning she acted normal. Too normal. Smiling, humming, making breakfast like nothing had happened. I should have left it alone. A few nights later, we fell asleep again after watching a movie. When I woke up, it was quiet, that heavy kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. Sunlight leaked through the cracks in the blinds. I reached out, but she wasn't there. Her side of the bed was cold. I called her name. Nothing. Her phone was still on the nightstand, her bag on the floor. The bathroom light was off. The apartment was dead silent. I got up and started walking around, half expecting her to jump out and scare me. But something felt wrong. The air was heavier, thicker somehow. I couldn't hear any sounds from outside. No traffic, no neighbors. Then I noticed the hallway door, the locked one. It was open, just slightly. I hesitated for a second, then pushed it open. The first thing I noticed was the smell, something faintly chemical, like photo developer fluid. The room was dark, but strips of red light seeped through from a small lamp near the back. My brain took a few seconds to process what I was seeing. The walls were covered in Polaroids, hundreds of them. Some hung neatly in rows, others taped unevenly across the corners. Every single one was of a man sleeping. Different men, different beds. Some photos were old and faded, others looked recent, crisp, clear. My stomach dropped. There were at least 30 photos in total. Some guys were lying face up, some curled on their sides. One was taken from the floor, another from the doorway. A few had notes written underneath in black ink. Names, dates, small things like first night or after dinner. I started stepping back toward the door when something caught my eye. A Polaroid near the middle of the wall, still fresh, colors bright and sharp. It was me. Lying in her bed, eyes closed, my arm over my head. The same blanket, same pillow, same faint light from the window. The photo must have been taken the night before, or maybe even just hours ago. For a second, I couldn't move. My brain just stopped. I stared at it, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that it was some weird coincidence, that maybe it wasn't me. But it was. Every detail was right. I grabbed my stuff and walked out. Didn't run, didn't shout, just walked. My body was moving before my mind could catch up. When I got outside, the air felt too cold. My hands were shaking. I looked up at the building, half expecting her to appear in the window. Nothing. I drove home in silence, didn't tell anyone, didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo again, the way I looked so unaware, so still. The next day, I tried calling her. The number was disconnected. Her Tinder profile was gone. When I went back to the building, someone else answered the buzzer, said no one named Maya lived there, said the apartment had been empty for months. I don't know if I believe that. A week later, I woke up to the sound of mail being pushed through my door. Just a single envelope, no return address. Inside was a Polaroid. It was another picture of me, this time in my own bed. The angle was the same as all the others. Now, every time I fall asleep, I can't help but wonder if somewhere in another room, on another wall, there's a new photo being pinned up. One where my eyes are closed, and she's standing just out of frame, smiling behind the camera.